For joining us and welcome to the program.
Delighted to be with you.
All right, so 7 days of airstrikes into Gaza, rockets into Israel, 170 casualties, 1,260 injured. Is there an end in sight here?
Well, there's always an end in sight in the short term. I think it's inevitable. Netanyahu has made it clear that he will not bow to international pressure. But the reality is Israel is a part of the larger world and there will be an end to it in the short term. In the long term, however, I mean, we're going to be seeing a repetition of this kind of thing. We've seen it 2 years ago, we've seen it 4 or 5 years ago. So we're going to see a repetition of this at this very, very dramatic level, probably an escalation of it, because there is only so far that you can push people who live a life of being besieged. I mean, Gaza has quite correctly by the United Nations described as the largest prison inside the world. And so you're going to be having a repetition of the build-up of tensions inside, and the Gazans are not going to take all of this lying down indefinitely.
You say international pressure, but all it takes is one phone call from President Obama and it's all over. Why hasn't he made that call?
I think that President Obama, a nice guy as he may be, he's also subject to pressures inside the United States. I think that the Israeli lobby is a formidable one by any standards in a country that is generally governed by lobbies. And so there is a limited amount that President Obama can actually do, given the fact that he is in some ways, like all American politicians, are the prisoners of lobbies.
Israel says that they're targeting Hamas militants. Hamas has enjoyed the vote of the people in Palestine. In fact, Israel describes them as a terrorist organization like Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda. Is this a fair comment?
Well, I mean, I think we come from a nation that is currently governed by people that were described as terrorists before. It was only 6 years ago, believe it or not, when Nelson Mandela was, his name was removed from the United States list of terrorists. And so it's clearly not fair comment, but we're living in an age where as soon as you want to rubbish any of your opponents, you describe them as terrorists. And now, of course, you have ISIS in the Levant, and you have Boko Haram, and so now Hamas. The reality is Hamas was elected by the Palestinian people in an elections that was overseen by the international community, including the United States of America.
Israel says 1,000 rockets have been fired into Israel. We have a right to protect ourselves.
Of course, I think all societies have a right to protect themselves. But firstly, and this is, I mean, I don't want to slide into the realm of the conspiracy theories, but much has been written in recent days about whether these are really rockets that, or simulated attacks inside Israel. Israel does have the right to defend itself. Does an occupying power have the right to defend itself? And in relation to Gaza, in relation to much of the Palestinian territory, certainly in international law, Israel is an occupying force. So if Israel has the right to defend itself, similarly, it is in international law a recognized right of occupied communities to resist.
All right, so America could stop this very quickly. The Arab foreign ministers are supposed to meet today. So these are these external forces. Do we miss Hosni Mubarak as the voice of mediation in this region?
I think that Hosni Mubarak was certainly a voice of mediation. I'm not quite sure exactly if he could have been described as a friend of the Palestinians. Morsi is not Morsi, General Sisi is in a much stronger position than what Hosni Mubarak was, but is also a much closer friend of Israel than what Hosni Mubarak was, and has much less of a sense of accountability to the Arab Street than what Hosni Mubarak has. So in relation to Sisi, yes, Morsi is a missed figure. In relation to what the Palestinians need, I'm quite sure the Palestinians, it's half a dozen of one and 6 of the other.
Prof, we could talk about this all night. Unfortunately, we run out of time. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
All right, so that's Professor Farid Isak from the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Vabakshini?
Thank you, Peter. One of the most powerful voices against the injustice of apartheid is silent. Nobel laureate and writer Nadine Gordimer died in her sleep at her Johannesburg home on